Okay, this is now the Tarot Process Part 8, the Celtic Cross, Card 1, More. Because I want to make one more point about the first card in the Celtic Cross. And I've got my notes here. I wrote down a few words. And it occurred to me, in a way, making a video is a bit like doing a tarot reading, in that I've got an idea of what I want to say, but I don't know the exact words that I'm going to use to express the idea, or I've got a number of things that I could talk about, and I may or may not mention them, because it's not a script. You know what I mean? You're not exactly making it up as you go along, but you're looking at a card and going along with or being led by the picture on the card, or the influence of the card as you judge it. But it occurred to me, and I didn't know if I was going to say this or not, we have to remember that life is not a TV show, because I think we get, or people have become so used to, you've got an hour-long TV show and you've got a problem at the beginning, you've got the bit in the middle, and then you've got the solution at the end. So after an hour, everything works together and it's all been resolved and everybody's happy, apart from the bad guy who's now in jail. And it's easy to slip into thinking that everything ought to be like that, or if it's not like that, if everything isn't already resolved and all working harmoniously together, that there's something wrong, instead of understanding that life is sometimes messy. So somebody can ask you a question, is this going to happen? And you look at the cards, and maybe you think, I ought to be able to say yes or no. But sometimes people's lives are in a situation where there is no answer yet, or there is no solution that's available for them yet. And I think we ought to remember that. Or if we remember life is not a script, then we can look at cards that come up and deal with them, I think, as they're meant to be dealt with. Okay, so I have my visual aids here. Let's say you're going to do a painting and you've got 4 colors, right? And you've got color, and you can make any color from those 4. And then those are, let's say, your 4 basic colors that you use. Then somebody gives you something else, another color. So this extra color that you're given might become something that you use all the time. It may become your primary color or your dominant color, but it also might be something that you only use now and again, or you use very infrequently, or you use it when you remember about it, but most of the time you forget, and it's not really anywhere near the front of your mind. Or maybe you take this color and mix it with the other colors you would normally use. And the reason I'm telling you about this is because I'm going to make one more point about the first card in a Celtic Cross, and it may become your primary go-to meaning or way of looking at the card in order to give an interpretation. But it might be something that you, like Vinny with his drumming practice, he perfected it or got to where he thought it was good enough, then he forgot about it. And if it happened to come back to him 2 months later, it was a nice event, a nice circumstance. But if he didn't remember it, it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't appropriate, or it wasn't the time, or whatever it happened to be. Because remember, life is not a script. Although maybe we can make our own, but that's a different kind of question. So the point I want to make is, it has to do with, I have to introduce it this way, or I'm going to introduce it this way. If you circumnavigate the globe, as old sailors used to do, they would travel around the earth by sea, right? Because circum means around. So you may know about the summer and winter solstice. Sol is the Latin word for the sun, and the ST part in solstice means to stand still. right? So you get lots of words that have ST in the middle or have ST as part of it, and it means something about standing still. So the sun appears to stand still in the sky for 3 days at Christmas and at the beginning of summertime. And then on the third day it's resurrected. Anyway, so circumstances are what stand around you. And it might be useful if you can look at a card and look at the first card in a Celtic Cross and know or have a good idea to what extent the questioner controls circumstances and the conditions around them, and to what extent circumstances control the questioner. And this is something for you, the reader, to know about. It's not always going to be something you're going to explain to people. But it means that let's say the first card shows that the questioner or the atmosphere surrounding the question, circumstances are controlling what's going on. Then if you get the devil reversed as the influence of other people, you've got a way of understanding the devil reversed, that other people are going to be a real problem, or other people are going to want what they want, and they're not going to be accommodating for the questioner. You know what I mean? Because the first card shows circumstances control you. Whereas if the first card shows you more or less control circumstances, or it's in your power to control circumstances, then the devil reversed in the 8th position isn't going to be as powerful, because you control circumstances more or less. So the other thing is, I'll tell you this now. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know what it connects with. But somebody a few days ago emailed me about mindset, and she mentioned that how she finds that mindset often results in things happening the way you want. That's not exactly what she said, but that's kind of what she meant. And I wrote back and said, so what came first? The fact that the thing was going to happen, then you thought about it, or the fact that you thought about it and then the thing came about? So it's like, do we have fate? Is our life fated, or do we have free will? And the thing is, it's not one or the other, it's both. And that's why the first card in a Celtic Cross is dealing with, in its own way, it's dealing with fate and free will. To what extent are things going to happen because they're going to happen, and there's nothing you can, or there's not much you can do about it? Or to what extent do we get to choose the overall flow or the overall direction that our life is going to go in? And that's the first card in a Celtic Cross. So you could take that idea of fate and free will, or controlled by circumstances or controlling circumstances, and that becomes your extra colour that you maybe use now and again, or that becomes a starting point every time you look at the card. So I've got 3 cards to talk about here. The first one is the Sun. Okay, so if the first card in the Celtic Cross is the Sun and it's upright, right, the Sun upright, then you control circumstances. You're optimistic, hopeful, full of energy. You've got ideas. You've got control over circumstances. And if you have a plan or an idea, you might as well create one, because it's going to work for you. Take advantage of the good time that you're in at the moment, right? Because you control circumstances. If the Sun is reversed as the first card in a Celtic Cross, you're up against powerful people, conditions, circumstances. And it doesn't mean that, I mean, it can be, circumstances can be people's habits. You know, if 10 people always do the same thing and you want to change that habit or that behavior, that's tough to do. So maybe the Sun reverse would show circumstances control you. So for a while anyway, or for at least for the time being, if you try to change the world, it's going to resist. It's not going to want to cooperate with you. And again, it depends on the question. If it's a question about work or a relationship, you've got an idea of how much power you have to make things go the way you want them to go. And when the sun is upside down as the first card in the Celtic Cross, people are already dug in to their position or their starting point or their beliefs or their habits. And so maybe the first thing you need to do is get them to change their mind about things. So you can't get what you want. The first thing you have to do is get the people, the conditions around you to change, so you can then get what you want. So first, maybe you have to lay a foundation. And again, this is you, the reader. You know that. So you've got a different way of looking at and understanding the other cards that come up in the spread. So the foundation card takes on a slightly different meaning, because you know maybe the first thing to do is to change people or change the conditions. Then we get the 5 of coins that I picked because people ask about it. So if the card is upright in the Celtic Cross, first card, then you've got, okay, there may be financial difficulty at the moment, but you've got control over it. So if you economize, it'll work. If you look for new sources of income, it'll work, right? Because you have control over circumstances. You can get you out of it if you don't like it. Whereas if the 5 of Pentacles is upside down, it's more difficult to escape from, can't think of the word, I don't want to say poverty, but something like, or a situation where you don't have much control, or where maybe you don't have much money, but it can get you to, so don't overspend, and maybe figure out what you're actually going to spend with the money that you do have. What are you going to spend it on? Because coins is money, but it also represents values. So don't waste your money. Don't buy things you don't need for the time being. Or it can be that you've got a plan in place, but with the 5 of Pentacles reversed and money controlling you, maybe you're going to have expenses you didn't expect. So again, look at your list, let's say, or look at your plan and figure out, is there something you've forgotten, or what could go wrong? And that can be a way of dealing with the 5 of Pentacles reversed. And the third one I got was the 7 of Swords. Oh, I picked the 5. I meant to pick the 7. I had things to say about the 7. So with the 5 of Swords, you control circumstances. So whichever role you play here, the victor, the one going off to help, or the one who's been defeated, it's temporary, right? Because you control circumstances, but it's not going to last. So if you've been defeated, you can come back from it. If you go off to help the other person, then you'll be successful in your efforts to maybe talk them around or get them motivated again. And if you're the one in the front here who's won, your victory, yes, you won, and yes, you're in the driving seat for the time being. But because of the nature of the card, we have to wonder how long it's going to last, or to what extent you're going to be glad in the future that you actually did what you did. Because we can do things and we win, but then we wish we hadn't done it that way. So that can be what's shown by the 5 of Swords upright. If this 5 of Swords is reversed, then you're kind of up against it. Depends what kind of influence we want this card to indicate. Maybe it's we've got the victor, and we've got the helper, and we've got the defeated person here. So maybe this card is about the roles that we play, because we can do the honorable thing, let's say, and accommodate other people rather than force them to obey. Because maybe this is what the fellow in the front is doing. He's making other people bow to his will and making them do what they don't want to do, but he's got the power. So maybe with this 5 of Swords reversed, the question is, think about the long-term future. And do you really want to spend time with people who are afraid of you? Because you can make them afraid of you now. Is that the best way to go? So maybe what you get with the 5 of Swords reversed is questions about morality. and what's the best way to interact with other people. Do you, if you can win, do you always win? That I'm reminded of various stories I've read about how, and it seems to be a Chinese or Japanese idea, that you don't want people, you act so that other people don't lose face, right? So that they feel embarrassed. So you don't do things that make other people feel embarrassed or stupid or incompetent, because they lose face, and it can take them a long time to come for you to get the best out of them, because they tend to remember what they did wrong or what they think they did wrong. So maybe with the Five of Swords reversed, preserve people or allow people to save their own face rather than enforcing your point of view and forcing it and imposing it on other people. Okay, so that's it for the moment. So think about the idea that with the first card in a Celtic Cross, if it's upright, you control circumstances. What does that mean? To what extent? If the card is upside down, then you're more on the receiving end and circumstances control you. So what do you do about it? Or how do you handle that kind of situation where you're not really able to freely move the way you want to move? And the other cards will give you ideas about what specifically to do to counteract the fact that circumstances are more in control of you. Okay. I'll see you in a few days, and we'll talk about card 2 in a Celtic Cross. Okay? Bye-bye.